This is what we have in our kit. We have 3 of these 3D printed string art frames, mostly so that you have a spare part in case anything happens when you're working on your project. We have the 2 French hooks that you'll slide onto this piece, and then we have the variegated embroidery floss. So we'll talk about how we put these parts together. First off, we're going to prepare our embroidery floss. So the embroidery floss is actually 6 strands of thread all in one, and I like to separate them into 3 and 3 and try and find the ones that are next to each other so that it's a little easier to separate. I'm going to start it off this one here. Now this is going to make it so that your color variation is going to be the same on both earrings. So that way you can make them match if you want. So it's good to have like either a friend or someone help you kind of separate this out. You can see I'm just kind of pulling it apart. You see how it's like kind of twisting back on itself? I kind of let it spin out like that. And just pull and let it spin. So I'm going to keep doing that. All right, so now we have the 2 pieces, and you want to make sure it doesn't get too tangled up, so kind of keep it in line. And there we go. Now that we've separated our threads into 2 sections, here are some examples of different ways to wrap your 3D print. So you can do kind of a really scattered, build it, wrap. You can have it be very simple, like completely wrapped around. This is kind of like a halfway between this. And this one's a little different where I actually went through the center. So I'm going to show you how I did each of these. So this is the first style. I want to point out that the 3D print has like 3 little dots on the inside. That's to help you know where the even divisions of the circle are. So I start off to do this one just with a little tail so that we can tie it off a little easier at the end. And I just kind of hang on to it and then just start kind of wrapping and building and kind of getting some different sections in there. And it's really cool as you see the color change and how that affects it. So it's just a matter of just kind of having fun. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. Just kind of build up those colors and the shapes. You can see sometimes it's a little easier to have it kind of further apart so that it locks the thread in place. You can see now I'm starting to get that change. And it's good to check out like both sides as you're working. Maybe fill some gaps so it doesn't look so open. Unless that's what you want. So yeah. And I just kind of work it up until I have it coming around so that I can knot it here in the corner. So you just tie like a double knot and try it out that way. So that's one way to do this design, and I'll show you the next one. So here is our next set of designs. So this one, I start off with that first little dot here, and then I go to the next dot, and then I wrap it around and then over one next to it. So I'll kind of hold that in place. Again, I have that little tail, and I just sort of keep working one next, and wrap it all the way around. So I just kind of keep wrapping. And depending on where you start your wrap will depend on how much of the middle will get filled in. And you can see now I'm starting to show up where I started, and I'm just going to keep wrapping right next to it. So there'll be 2 on that section. And I keep going to the next one, and next one, and next one. Now you can tie off here, and that's how I got this style. You can kind of double it up and see how that looks, which is kind of cool. But if you want more of the full circle, that's where we can do, we'll just kind of keep going. So I go to the next one, and I leave this tail kind of loose so it doesn't get too tucked in, so that I can use it to tie off later. Next one. Next one. And then I'm going to do another one right where I had started. And so that comes around and I tie it in that corner just like the other ones. But you can see this one kind of has like 2 layers because you're wrapping around the piece and has a little different look, but it's pretty cool. I like it. And depending on where you start and stop will depend on how much of your circle fills in. So like this one, I just did the thirds. So if I go like 2 over from that dot and wrap around, it will look a little bit different. So I would play around with it and see what you like before you like tie off and cut anything, just to see if you like something different. And it goes pretty quick, so you can definitely like try it out, see what you like, see how the hole's a lot smaller. So that is this style. The last style, I'm actually going through the hoop. So it's a little trickier. I'm trying to keep track of where I'm putting the piece. So if you want something a little trickier, this is the design for you. Okay, so I've went over and then I'm going to go through. So I'm pulling the thread through, and then I find my little dot or wherever you choose to go, and then I go over and then through. And getting it started is a little tricky. But it just takes a little kind of patience and practice. Wrap those together. And then I went over and then through, and then I'm going to go over where that next dot is and pull it through. And depending on what you want it to look like, you could kind of double wrap and move on, or you could do single and then go into the next one. So you would go one over and then through. And then one over and then through. So this one is definitely like more time consuming. But like I said, it has a different feel, different look. I'm going to be careful about your little end here. Okay, so I went from there. I go to the next one. It's sort of fun to like keep track of what it's doing. But I'm sure you'll find like whatever way works best for you, and you can do that. So that's kind of how it goes. And then it looks something like this, where it's like really bound in there and it's wrapped all the way around. So that is our other example. So here I have my finished earring, and I wanted to show you just kind of how I simply tie the knot. I have these long tails here, and just like you would tie your shoes, you can tie it that way. I did have one where it was really small on one end. And I just make sure I have parts. Put it right in line there. So I had like this one short side, and I did a loop. And put it through when I had a really short one. And that kind of does the same thing. You see it's got a knot in there. So then you can do like a little piece of, a little drop of glue right on that knot, and you can kind of glue those little end threads in place and then trim them off. I'm going to just trim this one for now. So I just did 2 knots. Doot. Doot. Just to show you. And that glue can be just regular Elmer's glue or just whatever you have around, just so that that little knot doesn't come undone. Then we have our French hook wires, so you can just run the ear wire piece through. You can decide which side you want facing front, and you can adjust which side of the hole you're going to put it through. So like this is going to be in now. And you see how this is like really wide open? You can just pinch it a bit, just so it doesn't slip off as easily. And there you have it, your little earring to wear. Hopefully these give you some good ideas for your own project and how you would want to do your own design. We would love to see what you come up with, so feel free to send us photos through email or on our social media, and look forward to other programs coming in the future. All right, happy making!